In the following video, I'm going to show you a technique that helped me to break away from pornography addiction. I'm not a doctor nor a professional movie maker, and for a very long time I kept this approach to myself. Just recently I shared it with some of my friends in recovery, and they found it very helpful, so I decided to share it with the rest of the world. The first major component in my own recovery was an understanding that pornography viewing was not just a bad habit. It was an obsessive-compulsive cycle that I was engaging in. For me, it usually started with a sexual thought I didn't want, which would make me feel guilty, and I would try to avoid the thought for as long as I could. Eventually, I would get to a point where I couldn't handle the pressure any longer, and I would go back to the only way I knew how to make those thoughts temporarily go away, watching pornography and masturbating. After I'd go back to my senses, I would feel guilt and regret for being so weak and giving in again, and would swear to never do it again. Unfortunately, over time, I would find sexual thoughts coming back, and since I didn't know how to handle them in a healthy way, I would try once again to push them away for a while, but eventually the whole cycle would repeat itself. Clearly, this cycle didn't help my thoughts to go away, and it only made them come back stronger and faster, and I began to rely more and more on my behavior to help me escape these sexual thoughts. And eventually, the cycle got completely out of control, to the point where I would have to spend most of my day watching pornography, looking at the real hardcore stuff in order to temporarily satisfy my desires and allow me to return to my normal state. In other words, I found that the more I fed my addiction, the bigger it got. The biggest lesson that I learned at first is that human craving is shaped kind of like a bell curve, meaning it gets really intense. And most of addicts in any addiction, including pornography addiction, will get used to the fact that they could never get past their craving, that the cravings will eventually get so strong that they will have no choice but to give in. In actuality, however, we as human beings cannot sustain any emotion or any kind of feeling for a long period of time, and eventually any feeling, including craving, will decrease. So the trick is to ride out our craving. And the more you learn to ride out your craving, the less your craving will become. Which of course sounds nice, but as many of us addicts know, it's not as easy to do. So I'm going to share with you a technique that I learned that helped me to do just that. But before we do that, I wanted to point your attention towards certain physiological changes that begin to take place in your body right before you're about to act out. Rapid pulse, increased blood pressure, your eyes dilate, and your breath gets shallow. So it is something to watch out for. And the reason it is so important is because we can use this information to help us on our way to recovery. We can use our pulse to measure our current state. We can learn our normal pulse and recognize if it is getting too high. We can use it as an indicator that we are about to get out of control. At the same time, we can re-measure pulse once again to let us know that the pulse is back to normal, that we are getting out of the danger zone, that the physical craving begins to decrease. Another very important component is breath. It is the only subconscious bodily function that we can consciously control. Think about it. You cannot control your blood pressure, you cannot control your pulse, but you can control your breath. You can take slow, deep, controlled breaths, and through that you can affect your subconscious mind. It is a very important key. So let's move right into action. The technique that I use to help me overcome the craving is called exposure response prevention, or ERP, and is usually used for obsessive-compulsive disorders and other psychological problems. It is very effective, it's been around for quite some time, tons of people use it, and it works really well. And the key idea of the technique is that you practice avoiding certain behaviors while you're still strong. So by the time your real craving kicks in, your body has already learned a new response. In order to do that, you systematically expose yourself to a trigger which usually would cause you to engage in an addictive behavior, but instead you practice a healthy response. Over time, you will learn that cravings do not rule your life and that there is a way for you to ride out a craving and return to your normal self without having to act out. And the high that you get from feeling proud of yourself will be much stronger than any high that you could possibly get from any addiction. ERP works in the following way. You first identify the trigger, and as soon as you feel the physiological response from your body, you measure your pulse rate, which you would usually find to be a bit higher than your normal pulse. After that, you immediately shift into controlled breathing exercise to calm yourself down. Next, you review your personal motivation statements to remind yourself of all the positive things that you can bring in your life if you were not to act out. Then you measure your pulse again and note the difference. Last but not least, you follow up with an act of self-care. Let's look at those steps a little bit closer. Step 1. Identify or imagine a trigger. While ERP is very effective with helping you overcome a real trigger, it will not be as helpful unless you have already practiced it multiple times before facing the real danger. Therefore, I recommend a commitment of 30 days with a complete ERP practice being the first thing you do every morning. In order to start the practice, you can imagine a trigger. For example, being home alone with computer. Your body is not able to tell the difference between the mental image you create and the real life situation. It will produce a similar physiological response. That way you can practice the exposure response prevention technique in a safe environment without having to expose yourself to real danger. If at any time during the day you begin to feel a strong craving and desire to act out, follow up with another ERP exercise. Personally, at first I found myself doing 2-3 ERP exercises per day, but soon was able to get through most of my days with only 1 or 2 exercises. Step 2. Measure your pulse rate as soon as you observe your body begin to change. It is easier to measure it for 15 seconds and multiply it times 4. I'm going to provide a quick reference chart that you can download from my website, feedtherightwolf.org, which will help you to quickly convert your pulse rate and keep the records of your progress. After you record your pulse rate, follow up with a controlled breathing exercise. Simply breathe in for 10 seconds, hold your breath for 10 seconds, and breathe out for 10 seconds. Repeat it 10 times. I use my fingers to keep the count of my breaths, so I can free up my mind and concentrate on my breathing. Next, you review your personal statements. You will have to do a little homework on this. Just sit down and really think, why is that you want to get sober? Why do you want to stop this behavior? What will you be able to do if you get sober? The answers that you come up with must be able to really touch your soul. Literally, you have to feel the goosebumps. That is how badly you need to want to stop this behavior and get the good things in your life. If you are not going to feel the goosebumps, if it is not going to touch your soul, it is just not going to be strong enough to make you choose to stop the behavior, follow up with the rest of the exercise, and move on with your life. Some of the statements that I used were, my dreams of having a wife and a child will come true if I walk away. I will be stronger and more in control if I walk away. I will regain my self-respect and dignity if I walk away. My family will be proud of me if I walk away. I will be able to look into people's eyes and feel proud of myself if I walk away. You can download 30 simple statements from my site. One more note. I had my statements written out on 3x5 cards and I would read them out loud. That way I was doing, i.e. moving the cards, reading and hearing at the same time. Human beings learn the best by combination of doing, seeing, and hearing. Number 5, re-measure your pulse rate. When you first begin your ERP practice, you might notice that your pulse rate remain the same between steps 2 and 5, or maybe even you will notice it going up a little. It is normal. Over time, however, you will learn to decrease your pulse rate and you will be able to bring yourself back to the normal state. Ideally, you should be able to decrease your pulse rate by about 4 to 8 beats per minute. Additionally, over time, you will notice that the pulse rate in step 2 will not be getting as high as it used to. This will be a clear sign of your progress. Number 6, follow up with an act of self-care. This is a very important and most overlooked step. You have to do something good for yourself. Preferably, you need to get out of the house. The best thing you can do for yourself is an outdoor exercise. That is what I did for my first 30 days when I broke my addictive cycle. I would go out and jog after my morning practice. If I felt the craving again during the day, I would do another ERP exercise and follow up with a different act of self-care, like cooking a healthy meal, journaling, or taking a nap. I have a list of 6 to 7 healthy activities that I came up with posted on my blog. I want to mention one story that was the key element in putting this all together for me. Exposure and response prevention technique is great, but I think it works even better if you combine it with other approaches. So here's how this story goes. One evening, an old Cherokee told his grandson about a battle that goes on inside old people. He said, "My son, the battle is between 2 wolves inside us all. One is evil. It is anger, envy, jealousy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. The other is good. It is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith." The grandson thought about it for a minute and then asked his grandfather, "Which wolf wins?" The old Cherokee simply replied, "The one you feed." So I thought, what can I do to feed the right wolf? The answer was not as obvious as it might seem. Over time I came to a conclusion that if I took a good care of myself, my good wolf will be stronger and my bad wolf will be weaker. Therefore, in addition to the daily practice of exposure and response prevention, I committed to the following rules. 8 hours of sleep a day, eating healthy, 3 meals and 2 snacks a day, drink plenty of water, at least 8 glasses a day, journaling about my triggers, meditating, morning and evening prayer, and avoiding dangerous situations. Think acronym HALT. Hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Warning, when you will stop your addiction, you will begin to feel more pain in your life, not less. You used your addiction for a very long time to cope with the stress of life, and when you are going to stop relying on this crutch, you will feel real pain. Just realize that this pain is a temporary, but necessary consequence of your past mistakes. Use this pain as a guide to identify what areas of your life need improvement, and what was causing the pain and discomfort in the first place, causing you to look for ways to escape. Some of the things that helped me on the way to rebuilding a healthy lifestyle were 12-step groups. There is a lot of criticism out there in regards to 12-step groups, but I recommend you doing what my sponsor told me to do. Take what works for you and leave the rest behind. The best thing about the 12-step group is that the infrastructure is already in place. If you live near a major city, chances are you'll have multiple meetings in your area. If you live in a remote location, you can always attend a phone meeting. It is there, it is available, and you can meet people who have similar problems and are looking for similar solutions. And the best of all, it will only cost you $2 donation per meeting. I have a full list of all 12-step meetings posted on my blog. Professional counseling. Professional counseling is great, but you need to be careful and pick a counselor experienced with pornography addiction. Educate yourself. Read as much as you can about the problem. This is one of the best tools that you can use to help you in your recovery. It will help you with your addiction, and it will help you to rebuild your new, healthier life. Spiritual life. Get involved with your spiritual life and make sure you make room for it. And journaling about your progress. Journaling was one of the most beneficial tools for me, and I cannot stress it enough. Also remember, progress is not perfection. Don't try to do it perfectly. Don't try to be perfect. You will make mistakes. We all do. As long as you keep working at it, you will get better. It took you many years to get this far into your addiction. Don't expect to fix it all in 30 days. It will take you some time. Be patient with yourself. Keep going, and your life will improve. If you stumble, don't beat yourself up. Just learn from your mistakes, and over time you will become a new person. If you keep working it, there is no other way. Your body will learn a new response. So this is really all I have. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for caring, and thank you for trying to change yourself. Thank you for looking for solutions. If you know somebody who's struggling with pornography addiction, please share this message with them. You can download a copy of this video and a quick summary as well as other resources at my blog at feedtherightwolf.org.